Oh, Hare Krishna, good morning, buenos dias, buongiorno, goeiemorgen, dobre utro, boker tov, suprabhatam. Welcome to, where are we? East London, West London. There's only two and I got it wrong. West London chapter of Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Math morning program on this snowing this morning here, but it's Hounslow snow, so it's turned to rain now. And today is another important day, or special day. It's the Disappearance Day of Srila Jiva Goswami. So, so I'm thinking of Radha Damodar Temple. We're thinking of Radha Damodar Temple. And earlier on I was listening to a recording I made there on this day in 2014, and they're singing the song that we just sang. That's the Sad Goswami Astakam. Don't want it to stop really, but anyway. So they're chanting the glories of Jiva Goswami in Jiva Goswami's temple today, and then they go on a big parikrama of the town with flags and kirtan all around Brindavan, and then they have a big feast in a sort of UP Radha Damodar style, which means only 3 preparations generally. Not like a Bengali style where there's so many different things. But of course it's very nectarian, some sabji, some unlimited puris, and these malpura, little malpura sweet in Radha Damodar. And things have changed a little bit there now. They built a new building, because it used to be on an open roof, the feast. So it was always very hilarious, all the antics of the monkeys doing raiding parties when the boys would come up the stairs with baskets of puris on their heads, and there's boys all around with sticks to try and keep them away, but they see the puris, let's go, and they just run through and try and grab what they can. And so it's a very wonderful day, all in the decoration, in a subdued decoration. It's the Disappearance Day of Jiva Goswami, not his appearance day, but still it's an important day in the temple of Jiva Goswami, Radha Damodar Temple, which is so important for us all. They are our neighbors in Brindavan, and really our neighbors, our friends and neighbors. And there is the samadhi of Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami and many Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Bhurgava Goswami, many others. And I remember it's changed now. There's new buildings and you can't see what you once could. But I remember the first time I went to the temple there, and I was on the top floor, and I opened the window thing, and I was looking straight at Rupa Goswami's samadhi. You could see it from Gurudev's room, you could see it from the rooms above. You can't anymore, but you could then. I just gave a basis. He's just opening the window, and right that close to this, the center of Brindavan, really. And Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada stayed there for 6 years, quite a long time. 6 years he stayed in Radha Damodar temple. And we heard from the servitors there that when he came, before they didn't know who he was. I can't remember what his name was. Was it Nirmala Acharya, or was that Nirmala? Something like that. I can't remember exactly. But the head of the temple at that day, immediately on seeing and meeting Srila Prabhupada, he didn't know he was some sannyasi from Bengal. He didn't have a big profile or anything, just like you'd see many in Vrindavan. But something about him immediately made him say, if you want to stay here, you can stay here. So he did, and see if I can remember that stuff. Srila Prabhupada wrote a shloka when he was staying there. Vrindavana Ramyastan Seva Kunja Tadanam Shri Radha Damodara Stuti Tahara Charana Muye Kanta Shailoi Kripa Kora More Gati, something like that. It's in the town of Vrindavan is very charming. Ramyastan. And in that place is a kunja called Seva Kunja Tadanam, where is the beautiful temple of Sri Radha Damodar. May their lotus feet, may they always keep me at their lotus feet, and may they carry me to the highest destination. Maybe take me with them. Prabhupada wrote that, and he's staying there. And now we see in his rooms, his little room. It's one little room that he used as the bedroom and his day room. You can say his room basically. And then there was another little room where he cooked. And they have wonderful pictures there of Prabhupada cooking and sitting there just talking with some guest. And where he sat, he had the darshan of the deities. We can figure out where it must have been, because he said he could see the deities have their darshan from his room. And he was working on his Srimad Bhagavatams. And anyway, so another reason why this Radha Damodar temple is important to us. And another of his, on the outside of his room, there's a couple of things that Srila Prabhupada said about Radha Damodar temple. And one of them is, he said, this temple of Jiva Goswami is my heart and soul, he said, of the Radha Damodar temple, my heart and soul. So, of course, we're remembering there today, on this day of the disappearance of Jiva Goswami, who was the youngster of the 6 Goswamis, the nephew of Rupa and Sanatan, and the foremost how to say protector and how to say the establisher. Mahaprabhu came and gave us 8 written verses and gave instruction to, most notably to Rupa and to Sanatan. And as we've been hearing for the last years of his life in Jagannath Puri was deeply absorbed internally. So the Goswamis, foremost among them Rupa and Sanatan, produced so many jewels, mined so many jewels in the form of these shlokas, these transcendental sound jewels that have their own, that are persons, personalities that for a penitent and surrendered heart carry devotional substance to the person. And Mahaprabhu is dancing. They're dancing. They're engaged in the Gaura Nataraj, in the dance of the divine dance of Mahaprabhu. Jiva Goswami had spent time in Varanasi on his way to Brindavan. He understood that he would have some service in the language world and that world. So, and he's Jiva Goswami, so he's the, it's not that he had to learn Sanskrit, but anyway, he was qualified in the seat of Sanskrit learning. He picked up all those, qualifications. Because later on, it was he who, in a very scientific method, gave the Siddhanta of Mahaprabhu, this Achintya Bhed Abhed, and gave all the supporting evidences and you can say scientific reasoning and logical reason, everything, so that it was unassailable, untouchable. No one could give any opposition to that. He perhaps wrote 250,000 shlokas or something like that, Jiva Goswami. And he wasn't even writing. You had to sort of cut it into a leaf, basically, to a banana leaf, into a palm leaf, to a piece of metal or something. And you couldn't rub it out. And so many books. And the jewel in the crown, so to speak, is his Sat Sandhavas, which is exactly that. It's the I've got to think of what the word is. It's the fortress. It's explaining everything that Mahaprabhu was given with support from so many shastras and so many places and so much evidence of so many types. So hugely important for that to defend the sampradaya against the attacks that come from. I read something just this morning, and it was it's a famous incident, but I wasn't really sure. It happened in Karachi. I didn't know it happened in Karachi with the what they called the Ara Samaj, something Samaj. And they'd asked Guru Maharaj to go there, and then they thought they were bringing me into a trap, and they thought, these simple-hearted Vaishnavas, we can get them. And that was where the head man immediately said to me, if the finite can know the infinite, it was that occasion, if the finite can know the infinite, then it can't be infinite. If it can be grasped by the finite brain and whatnot of the finite, how can it be infinite? And Guru Maharaj said he didn't even have to think about it, it just came with the perfect answer. No, infinite cannot reveal itself to the unqualified finite, then it's not infinite. And he said, then he shook his hand and left. He just left it at that. Wasn't going to go. Anyway, so, these attacks, and then there was the whole episode we heard about just recently in Jaipur, where the Ramanadis stopped the worship of Radha Govinda. They wanted Radharani to be taken to another room, and they wanted to take control of the responsibility for the worship of Radha Govinda and so many other deities there, Radha Gopinath. And, they called for the king, who was a devotee, who'd built Jaipur for Radha Govinda, had to call for Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to come from Brindavan, but he was very old, so he sent the young Baladev Vidyabhushan to come, and he had to take on all these big, stern, sadhus from the craggy mountains around Jaipur, the Ramanadis, and eventually, they said, you're not a real sampradaya. You haven't got. If you don't have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra saying why you're a sampradaya, what makes you different from anybody else, then you're not. You're not bona fide. You have to have. Who are you? And he said, well, we do actually. It's called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And they said, no, you can't. We're not having that. We all accept that. You can't say that that's yours. You've got to have one. And then, of course, this Govinda came to him, and he went away for 12 days or something, and the Govinda Bhashya came out. Anyway, that's by the by, but it's just an example. And a very intense example where the worship had stopped. It was on hold, and they wanted to separate Radha and Krishna because they're not married. This was their understanding. And of course, Baladev Vidyabhushan, Govinda himself, through the heart and pen of not even pen, of Baladev Vidyabhushan, or maybe pen by then, because that was later, that's 17th century, but said, that they are inseparable. She's the other better half of. Sometimes they play together, sometimes they play apart, but cannot be separated. What are you talking about? Like this. So Jiva Goswami really gave he was the arsenal, you can say, supplied the arsenal to take on any Siddhantic or other opposition to the Achintya Veda Tattva of Mahaprabhu, the inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference of the Jiva and the Lord. And I'm trying to think if there are any shlokas of Jiva Goswami of the Sandarbhas on the wall in Vrindavan, but I don't think there is. It's more, there's Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and then there's, Prabodhananda Saraswati, Bilva Mangal Thakur, like that. Like once that truth has been established, then it moves in a different direction. Then we're not in the land of, shastric evidences or, epistemology or logic, all those things. We're not really there anymore. We've gone to the dance place. So Gurudev would quote from the Sandarbhas and Jiva Goswami sometimes, but not so much really. His work had another purpose for the most part, and then he Vaishnav Seva. He was the youngster, so he used to look after Rupa and Sanatan and all the older devotees. They had this wonderful shining jiva to look after them. To try and look after them as they're in their advanced age, living very austere lives. I mean, now we say the temple of Jiva Goswami, Radha Damodar, the temple of Sanatan Goswami, Madan Mohan, the temple of Rupa Goswami, Radha Govinda, but there wasn't really any temple there. I mean, Madan Mohan was in a tree, And gradually their followers came, and gradually temples did manifest, but it wasn't like the Goswamis were living in big temples. They had little bhajan kutirs in there, and they would move. Well, they're famous for living under a different tree every night. I think in their later lives they may have stayed in one place a little more, but still they were not really living in big temples. So Jiva Goswami attempted to at least make sure that they were looked after and eating and resting and trying to how we saw that with Gurudev, and the devotees would bring all these things. You could have this green powder mixed into your stuff, Maharaj, or your Gurudev, or, with so many things, and he just, he'd accept it affectionately from the devotees, sort of rolling his eyes. You got to take vitamins, Maharaj. He says, vitamins are everywhere. He'd say things like this. He allowed the devotees to care for him. So I shouldn't imagine it was any different trying to look after Rupa Goswami or Sanatan Goswami. So, and then so he wrote so many things, what's that book called that Gurudev really liked? The grammar and anyway. And we've been sort of thinking of this recently because he wrote a grammar which I heard is still used. I don't know whether it's still true, that Banaras Hindu University in Banaras, in Varanasi, has a whole Jiva Goswami department. He is one of the greatest philosophers, if not the greatest philosopher of India, you can say. His output was there was lots of it. Whatever it is, what's that word?
Prolific.
Prodigious. Prolific. And unparalleled in defense of the Gaudiya Siddhanta. And he wrote a grammar whose name I cannot remember.
Something Vyakaran?
Yes, I think it is something like that. Where he traced, he uses the names of Krishna to teach everything, and traces how every sound has its origin there. And we know that Gurudev liked this very much. He thought it was wonderful. He had the capacity to mine that. So anyway, that's today's the disappearance day of Jiva Goswami. So we're happily remembering him and Radha Damodar Temple. And we have been reading from that chapter, The Tragedy of Separation, because Mahaprabhu's Sannyas Day was yesterday. 2 days before that he left in the middle of the night, and I think Madhusudana Maharaj was saying yesterday how that time of year in January, it's the cold days. I mean, I know it's all relative, but still, if you're in Bengal and you've been there through the summer, it gets to January, you're feeling cold. It's cold and misty and so many things. And he said it always seemed that the coldest day, more or less, was this Makara Sankranti around then. So that was the night that Mahaprabhu left and swam across the Ganga. He left at 3 a.m., he swam across the Ganga, ran to Katwa 25 miles in his wet cloth. I mean, this is quite in any way, from every angle of vision, it was a heavy pastime. And him staying, we heard from him and from Goswami Maharaj, and the mood of Gurudev and Guru Maharaj, was somber, sober, reflective, quiet in these days. Not something that can be imitated. This is the actual heart of the Paramahansa Vaishnava, lives in that plane of divine sentiment. So it's absolutely real, that. And who was it yesterday? It was it was Madhusudana Maharaj talking about that book, or maybe you weren't on that one. But anyway, he was saying that. I think it was from another mission. It wasn't our mission, but somebody had made a book, about Mahaprabhu, and the picture they'd put on the front was Mahaprabhu having his head shaved. And he said, and Gurudev was not polite or he didn't mince words. He just said, how can they do that? This is, this most painful, terrible thing. Put that on there. He was shocked and horrified and disgusted with it. And, this is Gurudev. It's not like, with that. This, because the devotees, the Paramahamsas, they live in that world and it's real. We can't, that's something else, we can't imitate that. Ooh, we could say that, this is terrible, but it's not, because it's tearing our heart like that. So, so this has been the last few days, until yesterday when Mahaprabhu, the deed was done, and Mahaprabhu has taken sannyas, and now things begin to get a little bit happier again. His hair is gone, but he's still radiantly beautiful, and Mother Sachi gets to see him, and we have these wonderful and funny pastimes of being lied to by Nityananda's shenanigans. He thinks he's going to Vrindavan, but actually he's not. He's being diverted. And then the house of Advaita, funny banter going on like it always does, and the hearts start to come out of that deep place. So we'll keep reading this because it's a long chapter, and we've been reading it for days, but we're still not at the end of it. So we'll just read a little bit from that, because the next, he's taken sannyas. That's done now. And this section is called I Must Run to Vrindavan, which is a beautiful sentiment. So after the function of sannyas was finished, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became mad. Hare Krishna, Dhanavad. He became mad. I must run to Vrindavan, he said. He thought, I have given up all connection with this world. I have no attraction for it. Our chief chopper is here. Yes. Hare Krishna. Jai. This Prabhu and his wife yesterday were cutting beans, green beans, for hours. Hours. I've never seen so many green beans. Really. We're very fortunate here. We get a lot of, because the devotees are distributing prasadam to many places. And now in the country there's this lockdown and this and that. And they're receiving so many donations of wonderful foodstuffs of all descriptions. A lot of them, high quality, organic, stuff. So yesterday there was just a mountain of green beans, and they were cutting them for hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, I don't know. It felt like all day, sitting there cutting beans. So, and he's back for more. 5 hours, bean saver. 5 hours. That's a lot of beans. They were like this. So I think today there was beans, and there was we also received some nice squash, like yellow squash. Is that what you call it? Yeah, pumpkin type thing. So I think the bean and squash pumpkin sabji is on the menu today. That's where Saraswati is now, and Krishna Mohini and some of the devotees starting to put those ingredients together for another huge distribution of prasadam in various directions from that. So that's all going on. Okay, so back to Mahaprabhu. He's become mad and he wants to run to Vrindavan. He's taken sannyas. He says, I've given up all connection with this world. I've no attraction for it. I must run to Vrindavan to exclusively engage myself in the service of Krishna. In trance, he began to chant a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna gives a description of sannyas to Uddhava. This verse was spoken by a Tridandi Bhikkhu, a mendicant. Mahaprabhu quoted this verse thinking, I have accepted this garb of a sannyasi, for this is favorable to my spiritual life. Now no one in society has any claim over me, and I will be able to exclusively devote myself to the service of Krishna. I am going to Vrindavan with no other engagement or connection with anyone. So in this way, in ecstatic madness, he began to chant and dance. Keshavarati Maharaj embraced him, and both guru and disciple joined together, chanting and dancing. At that time, Mahaprabhu spoke the verse of the Brahmin, who in the last stages of his life took Tridanda sannyas and had to tolerate the torture of society in different forms. He said, Etamsa astaya paratmanishtam adyashitam purvattamai mahashibihi aham tarishyami duranta param tamo mukundangri nishevayaiva. This is that verse. The previous great sages have accepted and shown the path of sannyas. I have now accepted that very form of life. Now, leaving everything aside, I shall run to Vrindavan. There, taking the name of Mukunda, Krishna, I shall cross over the ocean of nescience. Crossing over this Maya, I shall reach Vrindavan and fully enter the service of Krishna. The dress of a sannyasi is meant only for an external adjustment, but the real thing is to serve Mukunda. And so with this verse, he suddenly started towards Vrindavan from Katva. Near the banks of the Ganga, he entered the jungle thinking, now my duty is to reach Vrindavan as soon as possible, and there, in a solitary place, I shall sit and chant and sing the name of Krishna. So this is Mahaprabhu's plan in his trance. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ran towards Vrindavan and entered the jungle before evening. And Nityananda Prabhu, Chandrasekhar Acharya, Mukunda Datta and Jagadananda pursued him through the jungle. Sometimes while running, he would suddenly fall on the ground and begin to cry, Krishna, Krishna. Getting up suddenly, he began running without any, where did it go? Without any apparent direction, to the north, east, west, south. He's running here, running there, falling over, Krishna, Krishna, running here. He's wandering about in a trance. Sometimes he would run so quickly that the devotees could not trace him, especially at night, when they would lose him in the darkness. Then they would all be disappointed, thinking, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our Lord and Master, has left us. But suddenly they would hear him far away crying, Krishna, 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 in a piteous, wailing tone. Then they would run in that direction and see that he was lying on the ground, crying, Kahan mora prananata murali vadana, Kahan karan kahan pan Vrajendra Kumara, Vrajendra Nandana. Where is my beloved Krishna? I can't tolerate his separation. Where is the Lord of my life who is playing his flute? What shall I do now? Where should I go to find the son of Maharaj Nanda? In a piteous, heart-rendering tone, he was crying. In a bewildered state with no consciousness of any direction, he would say, who are you? I'm going to Vrindavan. Why are you disturbing me? After nursing him, again they began to start towards the west, towards Vrindavan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued wandering in trance. But the great attraction of his devotees did not allow him to go to the west. Taking advantage of his trance, Nityananda Prabhu somehow, coaxingly, turned Mahaprabhu's face towards Shantipur. It is mentioned in the Chaitanya Bhagavat that beginning from Katva, they went west until they reached a place near Vakreshvara, about 6 miles northeast of Dubra Rajapur, in the district of Birbhum. In Vishramatala, on the other side of the Ajay river, there is a place which is observed as the seat of Mahaprabhu, of Sri Chaitanya. There, they say, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu turned his face from the west towards the east, or from Brindavan to Shantipur. They wandered throughout the remaining evening, and then another day and night. Finally, on the third day, they've been wandering around for 3 days, trying to keep up with Mahaprabhu. Finally, on the third day, in the evening, he returned through Kalna to Shantipur through the arrangements of Nityananda Prabhu, who appeared before Mahaprabhu in the red cloth of a renunciate. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although so familiar with him, couldn't recognize Nityananda. He saw a sannyasi before him and thought, I'm going to Vrindavan and there's a sannyasi in front of me. He said, oh, Shripad Sannyasi, where are you going? I shall go to Vrindavan with you. How far is Vrindavan from here? Nityananda Prabhu showed him the Ganga near Kalna and said, look, here's the Jamuna. Mahaprabhu said, oh, we have come so near the Jamuna. Then he took his bath in the Jamuna, singing this verse, Chidananda Bano Sadananda Shuno Para Prema Patri Drava Brahma Gatri Aganam Lavitri Jagat Shema Dhatri Pavitri Kriyano Vapur Mitra Putri. O daughter of the sun, although you have appeared in the form of water, you are most dear to the son of Nanda, who is the spiritual son. You dispel the sins of all sinners. Please purify this mortal body. That's a verse of Kavikanapura. So he's bathing in the Jamuna, in the Ganga. He's thinking it's the Jamuna. Just before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived there, on the banks of the Ganga, Nityananda Prabhu sent Chandrasekhar to inform Advaita Acharya to come. When Mahaprabhu asked Advaita Acharya, is that you, Advaita? How did you know I was in Vrindavan? Advaita Acharya said, this must be some kind of joke. Wherever you are is Vrindavan. And it is my fortune that you have come here near the Ganga. Oh, it's the Ganga? Yes. Then Mahaprabhu, regaining his consciousness of the world, said, oh, then it is a conspiracy of Nityananda Prabhu. It's all a conspiracy of Nityananda Prabhu. He has brought me here to the banks of the Ganga, and he told me it's the Jamuna. It's all a hoax. I have fallen prey to his hoax. Advaita Acharya argued, no, Nityananda Prabhu has not spoken any falsehood. He didn't lie. You have really taken bath in the Jamuna. The confluence of the Jamuna and the Ganga is in Prayag. It was called Allahabad then, but it's changed back to Prayag now. And it is mentioned in Shastra that the western side is the Jamuna and the eastern side is the Ganga. Now you have taken your bath in the western side. So you have taken your bath in the Jamuna, according to scripture. So Nityananda Prabhu did not tell any lie. Anyhow, I have come with this new dress for you. Leave your wet clothes and accept this new clothes. I have also cooked something for you. For 3 days you have been fasting, and today as a sannyasi you must take some charity in my house. I am a poor man, he said with folded palms, but you must come. So they took him by boat to Shantipur, to the house of Advaita Acharya. The next morning, Sachi Devi came, and Mahaprabhu spent about 10 or 12 days there in Shantipur performing kirtan. Okay, I guess we'll stay there for now. We still haven't reached the end of this chapter. I think it's going to take at least one more session, maybe two. It's a very long chapter. I mean, it's broken into small pieces, but it's still a long chapter, this tragedy of separation, but so sweet. And now we're beginning again to, that Leela is concluded, you can say. The devotees are always feeling the separation of Mahaprabhu from Navadvip, but nevertheless, things are moving on now. So we're remembering that, remembering Mahaprabhu after such an intense period of divine madness, being affectionately, coaxingly redirected to the loving, affectionate care of Sri Advaita and Sita Thakurani, and to take prasadam, to put on clean, dry cloth, and remembering these wonderful things, the Ganga there, trying to refresh my shlokas this morning. Ananda nijara mayim aravindanava padaravinda makaranda maya prabhaham tang Krishna bhaktimiya murtimatim shavantim vande maheshwara shiro ruwa kundamalam. It's a Ganga shloka, that the Ganga is saturated with the honey from the lotus feet of the Lord, is like a garland of jasmine flowers around the head of Lord Shiva, and shines as brightly as Krishna Bhakti herself. Hare Krishna. So this Ganga, we're remembering the Ganga. All the devotees love the Ganga. Mahaprabhu always loving the Ganga. And the Jamuna, the west side, we can say. Next time we're in the Ganga, we can go to the west side, take a bath, and say, oh, we've taken a bath in the Jamuna, according to Shastra. And Radha Damodar, we're bowing our heads there in Radha Damodar temple, and at the samadhi of Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and Bhurgava Goswami, and there's a little Pushpa Samadhi of Srila Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur there, the Bhajan Kutir of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and all the Shila of Sanatana Goswami, the big Govardhan Shila, and all the deities there. There's Radha Damodar, Jiva Goswami, given to him by Rupa Goswami. There's Radha Brindavan Chandra of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Radha Madhava of Jayadev Goswami, and Radha Child Chikan of Bhurgava Goswami. So we're bowing down to all our neighboring deities. Our next door neighbors is Radha Damodar, Radha Vrindavan Chandra. These are our neighbors. And remembering all these wonderful things, hearing these wonderful things from our divine guardians on these, what otherwise to external vision is a cold and rainy morning in West London, but under the shelter of our beautiful, wonderful Srila Gurudev, Srila Guru Maharaj and our acharyas, we are in another place. We are in another place entirely. We've been in many places, in Navadvip, in Brindavan, and hearing these wonderful pastimes of the Lord and His servitors. Hare Krishna, Jai Gurudev, Jai Gaura Hari. So we'll sing. You want to sing, Didi? You want to sing? Hare Krishna. I'll move this a little bit. Maybe that way is better. Nitai Gauranga.
Harihara Je Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Harihara
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Go Premanande Hari Hari Bol, Jai Sabrika Shishi Guru Gauranga Radha Giridhari Ju ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Deva Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshira Deva Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Rupanuga Guru Vag ki Jai. Shri Jiva Goswami Tirobhav Mahamahotsav ki Jai. Shri Radha Damodara ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswati Acharya Vrinda ki Jai. All the London devotees ki Jai. All the world devotees ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Bean Sabji ki Jai.